عليهم ولا تهم بالضالين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي، كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي، وقعدت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي، فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي، من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاءك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاءك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا، مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي. أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك الصادقة وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلا إن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجنا فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع، لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك، أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك. قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما: أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها، وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته، وكل ذنب أذنبته، وكل قبيح أسررته، وكل جهل عملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك منصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا. قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بالسوء فأرده، ومن كادني فكده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.
صوت سلام اور مرثی کے لیے میں درخواست گزار ہوں جناب حسن جعفری صاحب سے، اور آپ حضرات سے درخواست ہے کہ برائے کرم تھوڑا تھوڑا آگے تشریف لائیں تاکہ مرثیہ پڑھنے والے کو کچھ سامعین تو دو چار ملیں. بیٹے تھوڑا سا آگے آ جائیے گا، آگے آئیں.
ایک درود بھیج دے محمد و آل محمد. ایک مرتبہ اور درود بھیج دے محمد و آل.
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد.
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. کبھی ملال شہ بحر و بر نہیں جاتا، ہمیشہ ہے زمانہ گزر نہیں جاتا، ہمیشہ ہے یہ زمانہ گزر نہیں جاتا. یہ حال ہے علی اکبر کے بعد بانوں کا، یہ حال ہے علی اکبر کے بعد بانوں کا، کہ خواب میں بھی خیال پسر نہیں جاتا. جو پوچھتا ہے کہ کیوں دل کو پکڑے رہتی ہو، جواب دیتی ہے درد جگر نہیں جاتا. کبھی ملال. درود بھیجیے محمد و آل محمد. سلام کے چند اشعار. مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو پانا زینب
کہا پانی جو پانا زینا، اور تشنگی بھائی کی تم بھولنا جانا زینا، مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو پانا زینا، اور رحم کھا کر کوئی بے رحم اگر پانی رحم کھا کر کوئی بے رحم اگر پانی دے، پہلے تم میری سکینہ کو پلانا زینا، مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو پانا زینا، اور صبر مادر کا تمہاری ہے جہاں میں مشہور، اور لاکھ صدمے ہوں مگر لب نہ ہلانا زینا، مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو پانا زینا، اگر سکینہ کا لب نہر گزر ہو جائے، گر سکینہ کا لب نہر گزر ہو جائے، اور لاش عباس دلاور کی چھپانا زینا، مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو پانا زینا، او قید میں چوب کے چلی جائے، او سر نیوڑائے، اور اپنی آواز کسی کو نہ سنانا زینا، اگر سکینہ مجھے پوچھے تو تسلی دیں، گر سکینہ مجھے پوچھے تو تسلی دیں، اور اس کے آگے کبھی آنسو نہ بہانا زینا، مجرئی شے نے کہا پانی جو، درود بھیجو محمد و آل محمد۔ فاتحہ۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ ایک درود بھیجے محمد و آل محمد۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد۔
دیار کوفے میں جب آل مصطفیٰ آئی تو ایک خلق تماشے کو جا بجائی، رسول پاک کی اطراء جو بے ردا آئی، صدائے گریہ زہراء و مرتضیٰ، صدائے گریہ زہراء و مرتضیٰ، نیا یہ ستم تھا کہ رونے کو جی ترستا تھا، نبی کی آل پہ پتھر کمی برستا تھا، نبی کی آل پہ پتھر کمی برستا تھا، حرم نے پیشی دربار کی خبر جو سنی، بلا کے شمر لئیں کو پکاری بنت علی، سنا ہے 700 کرسی نشی وہاں ہے شقی، ہمیں ردا تو اڑا دے کہ ہم ہیں آل نبی، ہمیں ردا تو اڑا دے کہ ہم ہیں آل نبی، پکارا ہنس کے ستم گر یہ ہو نہیں سکتا، تمہیں نصیب ہو چادر یہ ہو نہیں سکتا، تمہیں نصیب ہو چادر یہ ہو نہیں سکتا، یہ سن کے اہل حرم دل پہ داغ کھا کے چلے، اسی طرح سے وہ ناچار سر جھکا کے چلے، ہجوم عام میں دکھ سہے کہ غم اٹھا کے چلے، لئیں کی بزم میں بالوں سے منہ چھپا کے چلے، لئیں کی بزم میں بالوں سے منہ چھپا کے چلے، در امیر پہ کیا کیا نہ شور و شر دیکھا، لکھا ہے وہاں سر مسلم لہو میں تر دیکھا، لکھا ہے وہاں سر مسلم لہو میں تر دیکھا، وہ فرق دیکھ کے بولی یہ زینب ناچا، میرے غریب برادر میں تیرے سر کے نثار، مگر حسین کے سر سے ہوئی جو آنکھیں چار، قریب آ کے تھما فرق سید ابرار، قریب آ کے تھما فرق سید ابرار، ندا یہ آئی کہ یا شاہ السلام علی و فاطمہ کے ماں السلام علی و فاطمہ کے ماں السلام، میں لک چکا تھا کہ یثرب کی سمت جائیں حضور، میں لکھ چکا تھا کہ یثرب کی سمت جائیں حضور، خدا کے واسطے تشریف یا نہ لائیں حضور، سپاہ ظلم سے دھوکہ کہیں نہ کھائیں حضور، دغا میں طاق ہیں کوفی ادھر نہ آئیں حضور، دغا میں طاق ہیں کوفی ادھر نہ آئیں حضور، लिखा था ये भी के बच्चे बला में पड़े गए हैं, जो साथ आए थे दोनों यहाँ बिछड़ गए, जो साथ आए थे दोनों यहाँ बिछड़ गए हैं दयार कूफे में।
ऐलानात के लिए दरख्वास्त गुजारूं जनाब मुस्तफ़ा करीम साहब से। बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलावत।
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Tonight's Shab-e-Juma program has been sponsored by the families of Maulana Rizwan Rizvi. Please join me in reciting Surah Fatiha for his marhumeen of his families. Also remember your marhumeens, and I also request Surah Fatiha for my chachi who passed away earlier this afternoon in Toronto. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The next series of majalises will be tomorrow and Saturday, August 27th and 28th. The program will start with Namaz-e-Maghribain. Tomorrow the Namaz-e-Maghribain is at 7:55, so you all requested to please join in. The majalises for tomorrow and Saturday will be recited by Sayyid Absar Naqvi, and the majalises will be in Urdu. So you are please requested to join in. As we had done for Muharram program, we had asked people who wanted to sort of join in the majalises to register. So for tomorrow and for Saturday, we'll have registration, and the email will be going out later tonight. So please join in. We need to sort of keep a tab of people who are coming in case we need to sort of contact them. And also just a reminder for the COVID-19 protocol, please make sure you have your masks on and you're covering your face and your nose. The next series after tomorrow and Saturday will be on September 2nd for 4 days, and this is to observe the Shahada of our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. The series of majalises will be recited by Sheikh Fayaz Jafar. So again, we'll be sending emails for that. And before I request Maulana to address tonight's gathering, please join me in reciting this Dua Shifa for the sick, for the needy, and whatever the difficulties people are facing in this world. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amman yujibul muttarra iza da'a wa yakshifu sur. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respectfully, may I request Maulana to address tonight's gathering with a right salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد Please recite Surah Fatiha for the sponsors of tonight's majlis. It was also from my family as well as Dr. Mubashir Abbas. He's requesting Surah Fatiha for his late father, Khurshid Ahmad, and grandparents Allah Bakhsh, Hakim Bibi, Safdar Ali, and Sakina Bibi. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata mustaqim as-sirata alladhina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I know we recited Dua Sahat, but it is requested that Mr. Raza Ali, he's going in for surgery. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make his surgery be successful and bring him out of it fully recovered, inshallah. Let's recite this ayat from Surah Namal together once again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu yakshifu as-su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء 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 ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. صلى الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين وبالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أهل الكتاب لما تلبسون الحق بالباطل وتكتمون الحق وأنتم تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات بجماعة. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As we continue in these Ayyam Azah, it is important for us to continue to observe the protocols that are in place, especially in these days, and as well as related to these nights in which we commemorate the continuous struggle and the suffering of Ahl Haram. You know, the situation for the household of Imam Hussein did not become easy after Ashur. In fact, the troubles and the difficulties only piled on top of other mushkilat that they were already facing. And when we travel to these parts of the world, as you have, many of you have gone for ziyarat, you see that even up until now, the infrastructure is not very, what we are accustomed to here in the West. Just imagine how it was at that time. And the accommodations for traveling, it wasn't an easy task. And then to add to the difficulty was the Umayyads' way of treating Ahl Haram. That's how when the Qafila had left Madinatul Munawwara, how they had left in the carriages, in the amaris, with respect, with honor, and now once it's leaving, the plains of Karbala after the Shuhada have given their qurbani. They're leaving without any saddles, even on the horses and the camels. Just imagine that. Shair said, Shanidan kaybuvad misle didan. Hearing is not coming close to seeing what has happened. Imagine if you had seen something like this. How would you have reacted to that reality? So with that said, even after 14 centuries, when those ahwal and those masaib are mentioned, it brings the tears to our eyes. I said this in one of the majalis that while our children might look at our adults and our elderly, and as soon as the name of Imam Hussein and his family comes about, and as soon as the masaib begin, we see that our elders, and the older they get, they start crying. Their voice, is stuttering, and they can't even say something properly. And not that they're saying anything, but even when they're crying and their voice is all shaky, the tears are coming down their eyes. And we look at ourselves and says, what is it that's making them cry? And I'm sure this is a question that a lot of youngsters may ask. And it has nothing to do with how you are presented the musibat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, or how you were raised as far as the azadari is concerned. It's a tendency a lot of time, people from certain parts of the world, they'll cry. People from certain part of the world, they won't cry. And even within that part, some people will cry and some people will not cry. But when we're sitting in our own gathering over here, I'm sure many of the kids may have wondered as to, it's the same dhikr that we hear again and again, but as soon as our elders, men or women, they hear this dhikr and they start crying. What is it that makes them cry? So I couldn't think of any appropriate example. But you go through different difficulties in your life. And all I could think of was these fallen heroes of any country. When they go to war, and these young men and women, they fight in the battles for their country, to protect their country. Of course, the patriotism. And with respect to your borders, if you come from, for example, India, Pakistan, or Iran, or Iraq, or United States is your country, when you are feeling safe and secure, while the men and women are protecting the borders and keeping you safe. And when you hear the news of one of them have, died or left this world in the battlefield, and then, for example, I remember this vividly, and still do, when we were in Iran, a lot of these, victims of the war between Iran and Iraq that took place in 10 years, their janazah would still be coming after 20 years, 30 years, because they're still looking for the bodies of many who had died in the borders. And whenever their bodies would be brought, of course, whatever remains of the body would they find, and they would be able to associate with an individual, the martyr who had passed away, they'll bring their janazah, and you will see the janazah. The entire city has come to pay respect to this fallen hero who passed away 30 years ago. And then they're weeping and they're crying for their shuhada. Because of course, they're shaheed for them. They passed away, they protected the borders, they protected people who are inside the country so that, they will feel safe and secure. Imagine that feeling, that you hear the news of someone who died in a battlefield. Now their bodies are brought back and the memorial is being set for those individuals, how their family is crying. And if you know someone, and if you had some sort of personal attachment to this person who had died, and now this occasion is taking place, I'm sure when you're sitting in that somber, that memorial that has been taking place for this fallen hero, you will shed a tear or two because of the tragedy that they had gone through. And of course, as people are closer to them, the closer they are, the more tragic that they will feel. I don't know, that was the only example that I could come up with. I don't want to give children the example, imagine losing your father. Imagine losing your mother, imagine losing your brother, imagine losing a grandparent for that matter. And it could be too dramatic for them. But imagine, this is something which is just there for imagination. Nobody's going to be here forever. Imagine losing a closest loved one and how you feel after that person has passed away. Or if you know a friend whose dad, for example, died, or whose mother, for example, passed away, how when you're consoling them, it brings tears to your eyes as well. If that happens to you, now just imagine your elders, when they sit in majlis in and out, regardless of this is the 10th majlis in a row, 20th majlis in a row, 30th majlis in a row, as soon as Masaib begin, they start weeping and they start crying. This is how you should be able to react and inculcate that into your hearts as well when you hear the zikr of Sayyidul Shuhada. When you hear the Masaib of Imam Hussain, when you hear the Masaib of his young children. How is it possible for any human being hearing the musibat of Ali Asghar being carried by his father, who's, by the way, not helpless? You might hear in the words of Masaib or by the reciters and the poets that Lachar and Bebas. Imam is not Lachar and Bebas. He is Razi bil Qadr wal Qadha. He has thrown his head down in front of the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, if Ismail rubs his feet, the fountain of Zamzam comes about. You think Ali Asghar cannot produce the similar mu'jiza? In fact, Imam Hussain showed this I have read this in riwayat, that Imam took his companions, when he kept sending them up until 7th of Muharram, he kept sending them to get water. They would go and they'll bring water. Up until 7th Muharram, it was okay for them to go get water. But after 7th of Muharram, this is when the water was cut off. And they had run out of all the storage that they had. Imam showed with mu'jiza that this is in our ikhtiyar. If we want, we can produce water at will. But this is where the imtihan comes into play. So what kind of imtihan is this that you're going through? Again, the example may not be appropriate. Your child is sitting in SATs or GRE or whatever these exams are for post studies and graduate studies, sitting in this exam from SAT to any exam that you can imagine. And he's stuck. And you can go ahead and help him. Would you go ahead and help him? So, well, here you go. These are the answers right here. You can't answer this. This is here. Don't show it to anyone. Go ahead and do it. Will you do this? Will your zamir, your soul, give you permission to go ahead and help your child cheat in the exam? Again, I said example may not be appropriate. He said, no, he has to do it. Whatever he remembers, whatever he's capable of doing, because that's the exam that he has to go through. If he cheats in it and goes through it with cheating, then of course this will be a failure going forward in any field that he enters into. And we've seen the examples of that in some of the third world countries, how when people get to power based on not so much merit, but on their connections, that's where the downfall of that nation is. Now, I said example may not be appropriate, but Imam Hussain is offered that help. Jibreel Amin comes. He said, oh Hussain, you raised istaghasa. Do you need help? Imam said, this is imtihan from Allah. I will go through it. You go back. I don't need your help. Allah is my supporter. And if He wants this to happen, then this will take place. Similar to how Jibreel would come to Rasulullah when the people of Taif were bothering Rasulullah, annoying him, pelting stones at him to the extent that he was bleeding. He came down and said, Jibreel said, oh Rasulullah, if you order me, I'll bring these two mountains together. Everyone in between these two mountains will be crushed. Rasulullah said, I was sent as rahmatan lil alameen. I was not sent to go ahead and be a zahmat for people. I was sent to be rahmat and mercy for people. So imagine that tragedy, and from that aspect, you'll be able to then bring these emotions to your heart. I know you want to cry, you want to weep, but then sometimes some of the things get in the way. Especially I'm speaking to the kids, I'm not speaking to the elders. Some of the things get in the way. What if someone is watching me weep and crying? It won't look good. How would someone say, what if someone comes up to me and says, oh, stop. Riwayat mention, man baka wa abka wa tabaka. whoever wept, made others cry, or even made the face as if the person is crying. Wajabat lahul Jannah. Jannat becomes wajib for such an individual. Don't take for granted the tears that come from your eyes for shedding for Sayyid al-Shuhada and his musibah. This is an ibadat. A tear coming out of your eyes, shedding for Imam Hussein is considered to be ibadat as well. I read it in a riwayat as well, that you know how in the month of Ramadan, it says, أَنفَاسُكُمْ فِيهِ tasbih. Your breath that you take in the month of Ramadan is what? It's considered to be tasbih and the glorification of Allah. وَنَوْمُكُمْ فِيهِ ibadah. And your sleep is considered to be ibadat. Guess what? In this month, when you shed tears, especially in this month, but outside of this month as well, this is the barakat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq alayhi wasalam said, your tears, lihammina, for our hammu gham, for our tragedy. You know, when a person cries, nafasul mahmoom, or the words of Imam, nafasul mahmoom, the breath that is taken, and the breath which starts to stutter and starts to give away when the person is speaking and is unable to talk because he's overcome by the emotions of the tragedy of Imam Hussein. He said that is considered to be tasbih. That is your tasbih. And when you do that, that intention of doing this action is actually considered to be ibadat as well. So when you come for this ibadat, as we know we come for this ibadat, with that intention, and soften your heart. Stay away from things which make your heart what? Make your heart hard. And the stern-heartedness becomes the reason sometimes that we don't want to cry. So don't let these things get in the way. When the time for musibat comes and when the time for crying comes, cry. Because what does it mention? When a person cries, you relieve yourself of many of the difficulties as well. This is a therapy. And Sayyid al-Shuhada is providing this therapy to you. That 2 in 1, while you do this therapy, while you get benefit physically and spiritually, but also you're gaining sawab and getting the reward of doing so, that it is considered to be tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I recited this ayat from Surah Al-Imran. I won't get too much time to talk about it. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to Ahl Kitab, Ya Ahl Kitab, Lima talbisun al-haqqa bil-batil. O people of the book, why do you mix haqq with batil? وَتَكْتُمُونَ الْحَقَّ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And you hide the haqq, while you know that it is haqq, while you know that it is truth. We see that this ayat and many such ayat that have appeared in Quran speaking to Ahl Kitab. While the address may be to Ahl Kitab, we find that it is speaking to others as well. Now specifically here it is addressing Ahl Kitab. One of the reasons why their madhab has gone in the direction that it has is because of the reason that they hid the facts of their madhab. Number one, as the ayat said, taktumun al-haq. Taktumun means to hide the facts and the reality and haqq. وَتَلْبِسُونَ الْحَقَّ بِالْبَاطِلِ. They mixed haqq with batil. That is another thing. And in another ayat Allah says, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمِ. They did what? They did tahrif in the kalam. So 3 things. First, they will hide things from their people. Number 2, they will mix good and bad. And number 3, as you know, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمِ, they will do tahrif. You will look at, this is done systematically, one thing after another. That in the initial state, they didn't want to change things. So what they did, they started hiding things from people. When people will come across and they will ask for certain things, they will hide it. They will not do justice to what has to be told, as is the case in our deen as well. That so many realities were hidden from people from the beginning of the Islam, from the beginning of after the demise of Rasulullah. Things started getting what? Censored. Mana' hadith, the prohibition of narrating the hadith, that whole saga was for this particular reason. To do what? To go ahead and block the way, block the access for the people to go ahead and know what is haqq and what is reality. That's why all these years, after the 14 centuries, so many things have changed. Within 50 years of the demise of Rasulullah, Karbala takes place. That Nawasa Rasul, whom people saw with their own eyes, not heard. You and I have heard. People today have heard about it. At that time, there were people alive who took part in the Battle of Badr, who took part Battle of Uhud. They had seen the grandson of Rasulullah and how Rasulullah treated him, and the things that Rasulullah had said regarding him. That Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. That inna al-Husayn misbahul huda wa safinatun najah. That man ahabba Husaynan ahabba Allah, for example. They had heard directly from Rasulullah. So within 50 years, you see where the society is standing. Not that everybody had become Yazid. No, that's not what I'm saying. But majority did not have the guts to stand up to Yazid. There were only few Yazidis. Well, those who were his few, I said in a sense, they were in thousands. The army of Yazid was 30,000 in some riwayat. But many back home, I'm talking about here in Medina, where Imam Hussein was raised and brought up, and in Mecca where Imam took refuge, they may not have joined Yazid's army, but they didn't have the guts to stand up to him. While they had seen with their own eyes, they had heard with their own ears the merits of Imam Hussein. Well, the same Imam Hussein is standing up against the Yazid, whom we know what he has done. So why this happened? One of the reasons this happened is تَكْتَمُونَ الْحَقِّ. The haqq was blocked from the access of the people. How do you block the haqq? You go ahead and deprive people from gaining access to that knowledge. Mana' hadith taking place. Prohibition of ahadith did that to people. The people did not read these ahadith, did not know these things, and nobody was allowed to narrate and quote. Abu Dharr Ghifari was amongst the individuals who continued to narrate. He didn't care about anyone. He didn't care who came in front. One day he came for the marasim of Hajj, and he was sitting in Mina, and people gathered around this elder Sahabi of Rasulullah, and they started asking him questions, and he started giving them the answers. A person came up to him and said, do you not know that you're not allowed to narrate the hadith of Rasulullah? Abu Dharr said, are you going to stop me? He was a bold man from the very beginning, didn't care for his life. And that is the reason why the Holy Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Ma dhallatil khadra, that no one more righteous than Abu Dharr has ever walked under the blue sky, under the green land. That means on the earth and under the sky. No one asdaqu lahjatin min Abi Dharr has ever been than Abu Dharr. So Rasulullah had said regarding Abu Dharr that he is the most righteous. So Abu Dharr would not fear from anyone. He said, are you going to stop me? Are you ma'amur on stopping me from doing that? And then Abu Dharr grabbed the sword of that man and he brought it to his neck, and he said, if I knew that there was time between you swiping this sword of yours across my neck, and I knew there would be enough time for me to say something from the hadith of Rasul, I won't spare that time. I'll go ahead and mention that. If I know there's 3 seconds between you striking me until my death takes place, I won't spare those 3 seconds, waste my time. I will use those 3 seconds to go ahead and narrate the word of Rasulullah. That man, of course, left. Had no way of dealing with Abu Dhar and a person of his caliber. So he was what? Sent to Sham. He's in Sham. He goes around narrating hadith. The riwayah says that this man walked into the masjid in Sham, and he saw that this old man, whenever he would get up to go to a place, if there was people over there, they will all scatter and run away. When he would get up and come back to another place, if there were people over here, they'll scatter and they'll run away. Imagine me walking around. As soon as I walk in that direction, people scatter and they run away. Then I come back to this place, people scatter and they run away. He said, what's going on? He came up to that man. He said, who are you? Abu said, who are you to ask me that? Who am I? He said, no, I'm worried because wherever you go, people, run away from you. He said, you should do the same thing. Because if you didn't, the hukumat will go ahead and persecute you. He said, what's going on? Can you please elaborate and enlighten me? He said, I'm Abu Dhar. And the price of sitting next to me could cause you your life. That's what the hukumat had done of Amir Sham. That if anyone sat with Abu Dhar, because Abu Dhar will always speak haqq, they will go ahead and, take your life. So people will start staying away from him. But then it did not stop Abu Dhar still. He writes, Amir Sham writes a letter to the third caliph saying that if you worry and if you want your hukumah to survive, then get rid of Abu Dhar. He should not be here. If you ever need Balad al-Sham, and if you consider it to be important in your hukumat, he can't stay here. And so he said, sure, send him back. Abu Dhar comes back. And then of course, they didn't leave him there either. Then he was exiled to Rabza, where there was nobody over there, and he died while he was in Rabza. This is the man against this ayat of Quran which says, تَكْتَمُونَ الْحَقِّ وَتَلْبِسُونَ الْحَقَّ بِالْبَاطِلِ. He is doing the opposite of that. So there were people who were trying to manage and try to go ahead and block this information. So they did the same thing. They did what? They تَكْتَمُونَ الْحَقِّ. They did what? تَلْبِسُونَ الْحَقَّ بِالْبَاطِلِ. When they couldn't stop that, people were still speaking. What do they do? Second option was to go ahead and mix haqq with batil. Mix right with wrong. And that way you'll be able to mislead people. So for example, when Ammar was killed in the Battle of Siffin, people remember the riwayat of Rasulullah regarding Ammar. تَقْتُلُكَ فِئَةَ الْبَاغِيَةِ. O Ammar, you will be killed by a rebellious group. People said, we killed him. Rasulullah said that. Does that mean we're rebellious? No. Comes the time to mix haqq with batil. Amir Sham said, no, you didn't. He was killed by the people who brought him here. They shouldn't have brought him here in the first place. The fact that they brought him here is the reason he got killed. With this logic, everybody who got killed in Badr was the reason because Rasulullah brought them there. So Rasulullah is responsible for the killing of all the people in Badr. All those lives that were lost in Uhud, Rasulullah is responsible for the lives that were lost in Uhud. And all the battles that Rasulullah, led battalion, he is responsible for that with this logic. So this is where you go ahead and mix haqq with batil. And when there were riwayat in praise of Ahlul Bayt, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn, Al-Hasan wal Husayn, Sayyida Shabab-e-Ali Jannah, Hasan Husayn are the youth of the paradise. Haqq with batil is now mixing. Abu Bakr wa Umar, Sayyida Kuhul-e-Ahli Jannah. The first and the second Khalifa are what? They are the leaders of the elderly of Jannat. You see how the similarity exists between the riwayat? And there are many such riwayat that exist in these books. So haqq is now being mixed with batil. Truth is now being mixed with falsehood. That's the second tactic. So go ahead and mix it so much that people won't be able to tell right from wrong. And therefore, when they aren't able to tell right from wrong, then all the things that Muawiyah does will be justified. Him selecting his son for the khilafat, people still today think that he was a legitimate Khalifa of Muslimin because he was chosen by the Khalifa of the time. That's the argument that is given. That haqq is so mixed with batil that you can't even blame them anymore. And their minds are switched off at that point, that this is the discussion of ijtihad. That he did ijtihad, he was mujtahid, and he did ijtihad. And according to his ijtihad, this was the best solution. And we know regarding ijtihad, that if a mujtahid gets it right, he is given the reward twice. And if he gets it wrong, he's still given a reward once. So if a mujtahid gets the mas'ala correct, he's given twice the reward. But if he makes a mistake in the mas'ala, because he's still a human being, then still he gets the reward. So they went ahead and said ijtihad is the same thing of ijtihad Muawiyah, that he went ahead and he selected his son for the khilafat. To go ahead and mix haqq with batil so much that you can't tell right from wrong. And then the third thing that Ahl Kitab did, Quran is telling, يُحَرَّفُونَ al-kalim, that they would go ahead and do tahrif in the kalam. They will mix. They will go ahead and after mixing, they'll change certain things. They'll remove certain things. They'll go ahead and omit entire chapter. When the chapter is not there, nobody's going to be worried about it. So this is how systematically Allah is addressing regarding Ahlul Kitab, what they did about their religion, and look where they're standing now. Anything to do with the deen? You know, the riwayat of Rasulullah or riwayat of a Ma'asum regarding the deen of Ahlul Kitab said, nothing of their deen will remain. And similar might happen to Deen Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Rasulullah said this regarding his own. La yabqa min al-Islam illa ismuh, wa la yabqa min al-Quran illa rasmuh. Nothing of Islam will remain except the name, and nothing of Quran will remain except the text. Name of Islam will be there, but Islam will not remain. Name of Quran will be there in text only, but of course nobody's going to be following this Quran. So here we got to be careful. This is where we find that Imams have every step of the way kept this from happening. That this is something which is a prophecy, but Imams have dedicated their lives in order to go ahead and protect this deen. And that's why when Sayyid al-Shuhada is leaving, he says what? He said, Inni lam akhruj ashran wala batara, wala mufsidan wala zalima. Innama kharajtu li talab al-islah fi ummati jaddi. Uridu an a'mura bil ma'ruf wa anha anil munkar wa asira bi sirati jaddi wa abi. He said, I'm not leaving to cause any chaos, to cause any corruption, to cause any fasad, to cause any zulm, and for fame for that matter. My khuruj and rise is only to cause what? Amr bil maruf and nahi anil munkar. My khuruj is only to do what? Follow the sirat of my father and my grandfather. That means what? Imam is trying to tell us, innal haqqa la yu'malu bih wa innal batila la yatanaha anhu. Haqq is something which is not being acted upon, and batil is something which people are not negating it. That is where the situation is now. And therefore Imam ﷺ finds himself in such a situation on the day of Ashur in Karbala. What does he say? Imam talks about people and their mentality. He said, Inna nas abidud dunya. People are what? They are slaves of the world. They are slaves of the world. And this is the psychology of insan as well from all ages, not just at that time Imam is speaking, and you can continue to see the manifestation of that. That in the nas abidud dunya, people are the slaves of the world. As long as their ma'aish, as long as their aish or ishrat and their life and their livelihood is continuing, they're fine. The moment they are tested, you find very few who are mutadayyin. That's the prophecy that Imam is giving. that there's so few that are mutadayyin religious. Otherwise, the qafla should have been 70,000 with Imam Hussein, not just 72. Qafla should have been much bigger with Imam Hussein. In fact, everyone should have, enjoying the ma'ruf, as we say, right? People are coming, Imam is telling them to come. People are stopping Imam Hussein. Not only they themselves are not taking part, but they're stopping Imam from going as well. Now, some were well-wishers, but majority of the people who are trying to stop Imam were not well-wishers. They were just afraid, scared, thinking and knowing that what will happen if we did this khuruj against, according to them, Khalifatul Muslimin. Imam said, my khuruj is not to gain any fame or anything for that matter. My khuruj is to go ahead and bring islah in the ummah of my jad. People have corrupted this madhab. I want to go ahead and revive this madhab. And that revival can only take place with my sacrifice. And therefore Imam comes to Karbala. You heard the Masai from the 1st of Muharram till the 10th of Muharram, the Masaib of each Shaheed. And on the day of Ashur, you heard the Masaib of Imam Hussein, how he was carrying the bodies from the morning till the afternoon, one after another, and how difficult it must have been for Sayyidul Shuhada. Put yourself, imagine for a second, that amongst the Shuhada are your closest friends that you grew up with from the childhood, such as Habib. Amongst the Shuhada are your own children, such as Ali Akbar and Ali Asghar. Amongst the Shuhada are your nephews, such as Qasim, Ainan, and Muhammad. Amongst the Shuhada are all of these people that you love. And Imam is going after each, picking up their body and bringing back. The person who went first, his musibat was easy. The person who went last, his musibat was the most difficult. Imam ﷺ was busy all day picking up the bodies, and it came time for him to bid farewell. Imam leaves, the ladies sending salam onto them, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, Ya Sakina, alaykunna minni salam, salam unto all of you. Janab Sakina says, Oh Baba, have you submitted to this world, or have you submitted to the decree? Imam said, how can I not submit when all the swords are against me? When there's nobody to help your Baba, how am I supposed to deal with the situation, oh my daughter? Imam wants to leave. As he's leaving, he asks his horse to move forward, but the horse refuses to move. Imam says, this is the last time I need you to carry me to the battlefield, but he sees that the horse is refusing to move, and then maybe he's speaking from his tongue, looking down onto his feet. Imam looks down, maybe he's pointing at something to only see that his daughter is there. Imam comes down from the horse, picks up his daughter Sakina. He says, oh Baba, you are leaving. Can I have one last desire and my will and my wish? Look at the desire and the wish of a 4-year-old daughter. If you have a 4-year-old, imagine this. Imam Hussein, what would be going through his mind and heart that his young daughter is asking for something. What is it, my daughter? She says, I want to sleep with you for last time. Imam fulfills the hajat of this girl, and they sleep. She falls asleep. Imam falls asleep until Zainab wakes him up. And then when they wake up, Imam says to his daughter, oh Sakina, that tonight when your mother puts you to sleep, and don't beg her for anything else. Just listen to her commands. Listen to her attention. Pay attention to what she has to say. Don't ask her that I want to sleep with Baba, because you won't find your Baba. Imam said, oh my daughter, this is my wasiyat to you, that up until this point, you used to sleep on my chest, and your brother Ali Asghar, he used to sleep with his mother, but we have such places. From now on, Ali Asghar will sleep with Hussein, and you will sleep with your... Ala lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون. بار الہ ہمارے سے بات قبول فرما. ہم گناہ گار ہیں, ہمارے گناہوں سے درگزر فرما. ہمیں اہل بیت علیہ السلام کے نقش قدم چلنے کی توفیق عطا فرما. ہمیں ان کی تعلیمات پر عمل کرنے کی توفیق عطا فرما. امام کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما. ان کے آوان انصار میں شمار کر. ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم. ماتم حسین یا حسین.
یا حسین 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 یا حسین
عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. جس کو زینب کے لیے جس کو زینب کے لیے پردہ کہیں ملتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا. ضد نہ کرنا تم سکینہ سفر میں زینب کے ساتھ. پہلو میں سو جانا بیٹی جب بھی ہو جائے گی رات. لوٹ کر آئے گا اب لوٹ کر آئے گا اب بیٹی تیرا بابا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. سامنے عابد کے بن میں لٹ گیا زہرا کا گھر. کس طرح زینب کو دیکھا شام میں وہ ننگے سر. دیکھا ہے کائنات نے دیکھا ہے کائنات نے صابر کوئی ایسا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی آنکھوں سے خون رکتا نہیں. رات بھی ہو جائے گی جب ہائے دشت کربلا. اس کا دولہا جل گیا ہے پانی بھی اس کو نہ ملا. کس طرح سو جاؤں میں کس طرح سو جاؤں میں اصغر میرا سویا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی جس کو زینب کے لیے جس کو زینب کے لیے پردہ کہیں ملتا نہیں. عابد بیمار کی یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین